So, I haven't done this in a chair for a very long time, so I may look kind of dumb. But this is called Awakening the Soul. Because again, he has these names, and I would say you should look at his books and his, but the way he translates things is really cheesy and not so helpful for our ilk.
Who is his?
There's a man named, this is from a lineage of a guy named Li Feng, who is a famous movie star in China. However, he did teach Jet Li Kung Fu for Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. So he was his trainer for that. So he's a martial arts expert, like master. He's in his mid to late 70s now. And about, I think it was 30 or 40 years ago, 30 years ago he started studying Qigong, and he worked with different masters. And that Dzogchen movement, one of his masters taught him Dzogchen, and that totally changed his life. The Dzogchen meditation is just sitting. It's a silent meditation where you move the energy up from your Danchen into your Niwan, which is the center of your brain, and down. And it's about integrating and balancing the qi. So he realized that what the world needed most was, okay, hold on one second. So in Taoism, in Qigong, the main idea is immortality, live forever. Well, living forever, there are a couple ways of looking at that. One of them is that you make this body that you're in right now live forever. Another one is you figure out how to take over other bodies and live forever by switching your soul between bodies. So that kind of magic stuff that you might have thought of as a kid, that's what they've been doing for thousands of years in Qigong world. The basis of Qigong comes from Taoism, and you know the yin and yang is, right? Yin and yang comes out of a concept called wuji. So when we were talking about Buddhism, there's this idea of the emptiness, and everything is in the emptiness and springs out of the emptiness. So in Hinduism, it's the same thing. There's this emptiness that's infinite potential, and God erupts out of that and then creates the other gods, and then that creates all the worlds and all the people. So in Taoism, there's this wuji, this infinite potential, and at one point in time, it twisted and split into the yin and the yang, and that made the 10,000 things. That's what they often say. This is kind of applying to what I'm going to be teaching, so it's nice to have a little discourse. So part of a way of looking at immortality is if you get an incredibly articulate relationship with the yin and the yang, you can find the exact line between them, which they call the Tai Chi chord, roughly translated. And if you can, if you read the Tao Te Ching when you were a kid, so you remember that concept of the Wu Wei Zi, or the Wu Wei, the idea of action, non-action is the way it's often translated. So if you're right between the yin and the yang, if you're in a perfect balance, then you're in this state of the chord. And if you can figure out how to untwist it, you can return to infinite potential. So I don't know how that is meant to look in a finite realm on a personal level, but that's another way to reach perfection and immortality, is that if you can perfectly balance between the yin and yang and untwist the thing that made the separation, you can return to infinite potential. And again, I don't know what Taoism thinks that looks like, because I've never read something that articulates it. But as I said, I was reading this book about the Reader's Digest version of all the ancient philosophies of yoga of India that yoga came out of. And it was fascinating to me that I've always known that the word yoga means union, and that the general idea is learning how to be one with God. But I never really knew what that meant, because you're like, well, India has 3 million something gods, and to a certain degree they're all Matryoshka dolls. I knew that they all collapsed into the main three, which is Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva, usually is what his name is. But those three also collapsed into a guy named Ishvara that I'd never heard of. And Ishvara is the fantasy, divine play, delusion of the infinite potential of the universe. So it's very similar to the Wuji. And in yoga, the the idea is that while everything is in existence, meaning infinity is deluding itself into believing in it's a divine being and then for creating all these things, while that is actually happening in existence, you have the opportunity as this tiny fragment of infinity. That's what we are. We're tiny fragments of infinity encased in delusions that make us believe we're separate and have stories. You can purify all of those delusions and remember that you are just a fragment of the entire universe. Drop all of your self-associations like ego and basically turn yourself into an angel. Not, for all intents and purposes, immortal. As long as God, Ishvara, as long as God exists, you will exist as an infinite, pure, perfect agent, helper of that force. So you can travel between all the different dimensions and all between all the different realms, but your will is that of God, and that you. So it's basically turning yourself into an angel. And I never knew that that was really the drive of yoga until having read that book. I'm like, that's what you're like. In yoga, you do the asanas to keep your body healthy and not a problem, to tame everything and balance everything so that you can meditate. And there's like an eightfold path that has all this stuff. But the pinnacle is when you can figure out how to stay in total uninterrupted samadhi. Remember I was talking about samadhi earlier today? When you can focus all of your attention on one thing, usually the breath, uninterrupted for a month. So imagine sitting there with your eyes closed, following your breath for a month. But at that point, you don't have a breath. There's no such thing besides you and a breath. You were one with everything. And if you can do that uninterrupted for a month, then they basically believe you've reached moksha, which is their version of liberation and enlightenment, and you have burned off all of your karma and you're not going to have to remanifest. However, if you can stay in that position for 23 years, I think it is, then you totally you're able to take all of the matter that exists connected to you now and all of your lives and ascend into an angel. And the highest form of yoga has nothing to do with pranayama, like forced breath work, has nothing to do with forced asanas. All of that is called willful practice. And when you get really clear, your body is just driven by prana. And your yoga practice is just being one with the flows of energy. And you just move and sound and dance and laugh or whatever is needed to free the body from its fetters. So I thought all this is really fascinating. So back to this. So this set that I'm going to teach you today, we're going to have to split the video up to upload the actual teaching, but this is a nice little introduction video, so we'll split it and put both up. Yeah, I'm going to discourse a little bit more and then we'll stop it and start it again and I'll do the actual teaching. This Qigong set is called Awakening the Soul. And again, Li Zhengfeng felt like he was tasked with the idea of teaching people how to live in unconditional love, which is, again, as I was saying earlier, the heart is naturally open to loving all things, but there's the delusion of separation that gives it reasons to close and be possessed and cling and all that stuff. So Li Zhengfeng's idea is to create he channeled all these different Qigong sets to help change your resonant energy to just love all the time. So that no matter what is happening in the conditioned realm, you're like, oh, but I can respond with unconditional love. I can accept all things, be kind, patient, considerate, sympathetic with all things in a loving way. So Awakening the Soul is a set that combines a lot of the stuff he's been doing over the last 30 years into a simple introduction thing. And that's the first thing he taught me in the class I went in. And as you'll see now, we'll do it now. It's simpler than what we were teaching, that I was teaching you earlier today. It's much simpler, and it's also kind of larger. It's got a much larger scope. But in all the junk I was just telling you, it's basically that story. You're just, as a person, opening your heart, filling it up with love, clearing it out, releasing all attachments, making yourself the conduit, as I was describing earlier, between heaven and earth, between the finite and the infinite. And I'll talk as we do the set. It's much simpler movements as well. And then you become a saint, which is one of the ways he describes becoming an ascended master, meaning you get outside of your limited sense of self. And go to heaven, which means that you become one with all things in existence, which allows you to be in total bliss. And then you become one with the Wu-Ji, with the infinite potential behind all the things. So I'll describe that as well. I think I'm going to close that door, though. So I'm going to stop this for a minute, and then we'll come back and we'll start.